Good Saturday morning. Good Saturday morning, everybody. I'm sorry I'm just a couple minutes late, but I'm telling y'all, I'm running out of me, y'all. When I tell y'all your girl needs help, your girl needs help. So if you have not gone to the website to volunteer, I need you to go to the website and volunteer, y'all. We're getting close. So I am Tamara Shealey. For those of you who don't know who I am, candidate for the United States Senate right here in the great state of Georgia. And we have a race to win. We have a race to win, and we're going to win it. And guess what's at the top of our agenda? Those of you who know me know what we're riding on. Reparations, reparations. And I'll say it a third time, reparations. At the top of the agenda, we are not playing for those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery in this country. So last week, we had a robust conversation with Robin Rue Simmons out of Evanston, Illinois. For those of you that follow the reparations movement, Evanston was the first municipality to introduce an initiative specific to repair, redress, but do we call it reparations? They call it reparations. And, you know, I brought her on because I respect the work. It's going to take all hands on deck across the nation to get this work done. We need all eyes on reparations. We need to have this movement, all of us pushing in the same direction at the same time. It looks different in different places and different spaces, but we are clear that those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery are the ones that are owed by the federal government. So today, after the pushback from last week, which I expected it, I had to bring the man himself, Dr. William Darity, on, and we're going to bring him on. But I have a co-host that's going to join me because he has lots of questions. Mr. Eddie Goodman, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Mr. Eddie Goodman, y'all know who he is. Mr. Earn Our Trust. It's an app specific to businesses, Black businesses that are giving back. Earn Our Trust. You want to tell them where the app is, Eddie, before we get started?
Yeah, you can find it at the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, or you can just go to our website at earnourtrust.com.
Yeah, so he was on with us a few weeks back, and we've been still talking. We talk about reparations all the time, but we had to bring the man himself, Dr. Darity, to the broadcast. Good morning, Dr. Darity.
Good morning, Ms. Shealey.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right on a Saturday morning.
On a Saturday morning. Well, thank you for lending us your Saturday morning. We absolutely appreciate it. They were looking for you. They were already pinging me, chiming me. Where is Dr. Darity? So I apologize for being a few minutes late, everybody, but he's here.
and thank you for having me here.
Yes. So last week, Dr. Darity, I knew I was going to get pushback. I absolutely knew it, but I wanted to bring Robin Rue Simmons on to talk about the initiative in Evanston, Illinois, and her arguments were valid. You know, she said that it is going to take first steps to push. So I wanted everybody to hear her point, and I wanted to bring you today, Dr. Darity, because I know you had some concerns as well.
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying, of course, a process of achieving comprehensive reparations requires steps to be taken. The question is whether or not the first step should be the inauguration of so-called reparations plans in states and municipalities, as opposed to the first steps being the creation of a coalition to lobby and petition Congress for a national program of reparations.
So that would have been your way of saying this is how we take these steps forward in the right direction. So
that's right. I mean, obviously you have to have first steps, but the question is which ones?
Yeah. And I got the impression that, you know, their initiative, for those of you who don't know and may not have seen the broadcast last week, Evanston, Illinois, their initiative is from 1919 to 1969 for those Black Evanstonians, I think is how they pronounce it, that were discriminated against with redlining in Evanston, Illinois. So do we call that, they call that reparations. Do we call that reparations?
Well, I have reservations about calling it reparations for two reasons. First, I have a very strong commitment to the idea that reparations for Black Americans who have ancestors who were enslaved in the United States should address the racial wealth differential. And I measure the racial wealth gap on the basis of the average difference in wealth between Black and white households. So that's about $840,000. And if you were to parcel that out so that you came up with an estimate of the amount that was due each individual African American who has an ancestor who was enslaved here, that would be about $350,000 per person. The total bill at minimum would be in the range of about $14 trillion. The combined budgets of all the state and local governments in the United States is closer to $3 trillion. So they don't have the capacity to meet that bill. So anything that they do at the local level, however desirable and however valuable, cannot really constitute an act of reparations on the scale that is merited by the history of this country with respect to white supremacy. So I just wish they wouldn't call it that. But in addition, the kind of step that was taken specifically in Evanston was to provide people with a $25,000 housing voucher. They could use it, or they can use it once they start receiving it. I'm not sure that anybody's received anything quite yet. But I think it's supposedly the first $400,000 is supposed to be paid out shortly. But individuals who receive this $25,000 can use it for either purchasing a new home, so they could use it as part of a down payment on a new home, or they can make improvements on an existing home. And I want to use the term receive in quotation marks because actually the funds never go directly to the individual recipients. They are funneled through the banks. And it's the same set of banks that were active in the process of engaging in redlining. So that's kind of an irony of the situation. But the $25,000 doesn't really make much of a dent in the context of Evanston's housing market. The median home price in Evanston is in excess of $420,000. And so if your typical down payment is about 20% of the price of a home, then we're talking about a figure in the vicinity of about $80,000 for a down payment. And so $25,000, goes part of the way toward that, but hardly all of the way toward that. So it's not really clear that it facilitates purchasing a quality home in the Evanston area. So not only do I think that the general idea of calling this reparations is a bad idea, but I also think that the specific program that was adopted in Evanston is extremely limited. Not necessarily a bad idea to have a housing voucher program, but it's certainly not reparations.
So the word reparations, Dr. Darity, is it not broad enough, or is it, can we not use it in the context of what? So basically, that's just not reparations, is what you're saying.
Given the objective of reparations that Kirsten, Mullen, and I've set in our book From Here to Equality, given the objective of eliminating the racial wealth gap, then there's really very little that any state or local government could do to meet that goal.
Yeah. Mr. Eddie, you want to chime in? I know you and I have talked about reparations a lot and different ideas you've kind of tossed at me. And so do you want to chime in there?
Oh yeah. So the first thing that we have to understand, and thank you for having me on your show, and I'm honored to be on the show with you, Mr. Dr. Darity. The first thing that we need to understand is that everybody that's listening to this broadcast, please go to Ms. Johnson's website, sign up to volunteer, and donate. If you can, make a monthly donation, because we're not going to get what we want unless we got people in the Congress and the Senate that represent us that can put this to the floor and get the votes. So until we're willing to pay, make a little sacrifice, put people in office that represents our best interest, we're not going to get anywhere. So I want to just make that public announcement. But but I agree that when Mr. Dr. Darity was saying that, to restore what happened to us as a people, really, you can't really put a price tag on it, because we're still suffering from slavery to this day. We have to repair a people, a whole nation of people. And so it's going to take not just money, but it's going to take mentoring, and it's going to take people that care about us, and that we can pull our resources together. And even if we do get some money, know what to do with it, because it's about restoration as well as reparations. We have to restore us as a community, because just giving us money don't mean that things are just going to magically disappear, some of the problems that we're having in the Black community. So
I don't want people to underestimate the significance of money, particularly these sums of money. If we talk about people needing to have some form of repair or restoration, and I'm not so sure that I'm really that wedded to that kind of psychological assessment of Black people. But if we want to talk about that, people can repair themselves if they have the resources. And that's the premise here that's really critical. You want to give people the resources that will enable them to make the kinds of decisions and choices that are best for improving their lives. So, when people say it's not just the money is a big deal. It's not something trivial.
No, I agree. I think the money is important, but I think knowing what to do when you get the money is important as well.
So let me ask this: Why do you think people won't know what to do with the money?
Well, we can just look at it like our spending habits. Not all of us, because not everybody's not the same, right? But a lot of times we know when we get money, the money does not circulate in the Black community. It leaves the Black community as soon as we get it. So if it's just about giving us money, yeah, that's important. But pulling our resources together, making sure that we starting Black-owned businesses and recycling that money within the Black community is really important as well.
So individuals like you who think that that's something that would be extremely useful, and I believe it probably would be, but then if individuals receive reparations payments, then I think it would be incumbent upon folks like you to say, here's a way in which we can organize to pool our resources to either promote existing businesses or develop new ones. That would be the entrepreneurial spirit, which I think is very, very strong in the Black community. But it would give folks who have that entrepreneurial spirit an opportunity to actualize their dreams and their ambitions in a way that they can't now. So I don't think that that's something that has to be taught to people. But I certainly think that folks like you who have that kind of a commitment and dream can inspire people to make use of those resources in that way.
So I'm going to circle back to something that I saw in the media.
Well, I just want to add something else. When other groups have received reparations, no one has ever raised the question about how people would spend the money. It's only when we talk about Black Americans receiving reparations that folks start talking about, well, we have to be taught how to spend the money. And I think that's really, there's kind of an element of self-hatred in that kind of position.
Keep talking, Dr. Darity. I think you got more to say on that, because
I'm going to leave that right there.
It was an article that I saw just recently. Someone forwarded to me about there's going to be some payments given to Black people, $850 a month, and it's an experiment. And some of these Black people are going to be here in Atlanta in the 4th Ward, which is a part of Atlanta where there has been just totally gentrified. Black people have been pushed out of their own communities, just totally taken over. So this is an experiment to give people this $850 a month, no strings attached, just giving it to them, just to see how if it changes their lives and if things change. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Darity? I thought it was quite insulting. Like, you're pushing us out, you've gentrified these communities, and now you want to experiment to see if giving us some money will help us pull ourselves up by our bootless straps.
Or our strapless boots. Or
Strapless
we don't have boots or straps.
Neither.
No. There have been experiments of this type that have already taken place. And they've taken place in context in which it's not accompanied by gentrification. So it's less patronizing in some sense. And if we're inclined to make judgments about what people do with the money, in these other examples or instances, it seems like people do what appears to be very, very sensible things with the money that they receive. They try to pay off existing debts. They try to make sure that their electric bills are met. They try to make sure that they have adequate clothing for their kids to go to school. I mean, those are the kinds of things they customarily spend the money on. And I would also add that there have been studies about individuals who've received lottery winnings, which are much more substantial than, say, $500 or $850 a month. And there's kind of an urban myth that all people who win lotteries have a tendency to lose the money or spend the money away within a year or two. Or the other thing that people frequently say is that the recipients of lottery winnings die early. Okay. So these are actually urban myths. In fact, if you do a very careful study of what happens when people receive windfalls like a lottery, the first thing that they do is set up accounts for their children and their grandchildren. And that, of course, doesn't strike me as being a wild or crazy use of the money. Now, I don't know what their children and grandchildren do with the funds in the accounts, but the recipients of the lottery winnings, they attempt to set up a better set of circumstances intergenerationally for their children and grandchildren.
So we do know what to do. When that $2,000, quote unquote, that was supposed to come to those that voted, when we got Warnock and Ossoff elected, and it was $1,400, $600 was subtracted. They talked about, how that money was spent. And I just believe people paid their bills.
Right.
People caught up on stuff. They didn't just go out and get their hair done and get their nails done. Folks had bills and responsibilities, and that money was spent before they even got it.
Well, and I want to say, if they'd use some of the money to get their hair done or go to a concert, my view is if we complain about that, we're basically saying that people who don't have much money should never have any fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I'm okay with however they use the money, except for maybe buying drugs.
You want to jump in, Mr. Eddie?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, and I'm not saying that we need to put any stipulations on what people, do with the money. It's your money. You do what you want to do with it. Only thing I was saying is that historically, when you look at the African American community, we had some really deep, serious issues. And if it was just because of money, because me personally, I want to see us, evolve. And I just don't think money is just the only answer. It helps. and we owe that money, and we need to get that money.
Historically, the Black community in the United States has been extremely entrepreneurial and has been quite successful in trying to develop prosperous communities. But what has happened is it's not a question of Black people doing crazy things or making bad decisions. There were 100 massacres that took place from the end of the Civil War into the 1940s, in which prosperous Black communities were essentially destroyed. Whether you're talking about Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, or you're talking about the 35 instances of these white massacres that took place in the year 1919 alone, you have situations in which Black people were extremely accomplished in terms of community building with whatever resources they had, and that was destroyed. Or much later, that is in the latter half of the 20th century, you had a situation in which the federal funds were used for the purposes of running highways through the heart of Black communities, including their business districts. So I'm not really sure about what people mean about historically we haven't done the right thing. Historically, we've done all the right things, but we have frequently experienced a situation in which what we have achieved and what we've accomplished has been taken away from us, and taken away from us violently.
Mr. Eddie?
Well, I wasn't talking that deep as far as the total. I'm just saying that when you look, my thing is our community. I'm looking at the gangs, the violence, the drugs. I'm just saying that we have money. We have, rappers that got millions of dollars for this.
No, we don't have money.
Well, individuals have.
We don't have money. That's
the problem. Individuals who live in the inner city. They have the individuals like the rappers, the drug dealers. They have money.
These are outliers, and especially the individuals who are engaged in the drug traffic. They might have money at some point, but they don't have very long lives usually. So, but these are exceptions. If you want to look at the data carefully, 25% of white households, that's 1/4 of all white households, have a net worth in excess of $1 million. That is true for only 4% of Black households. There are no Blacks who have levels of net worth that compare at all with the top billionaires in the United States. So, and if we were to look carefully at the data, whites who are in the lowest 20% of the income distribution, the poorest whites in the United States, have a higher level of wealth than all Black Americans taken together. So we don't have this pool of resources that we are misusing or not deploying adequately. We simply don't have this pool of resources.
Well, let me jump in there. What I'm trying to say is that you take someone that grows up in the projects, and if they make money either selling drugs or rap, they still have, for me, my thing is why I'm supporting reparations, but I do believe with money and mentorship and us pulling our resources together, we can solve a lot of problems within the Black community. What I'm saying is when you take an individual who makes it either doing selling drugs or rapping, we still have violence in our community, even if they have money. So what I'm saying is that, yes, giving us our money.
I don't know if we would still have violence in our community, but I'm not talking about a situation in which a handful of Black people get a little more money. Talking about a situation in which 40 million Black people receive $350,000 apiece at least. Under those circumstances, we're talking about a very different world from the one that we currently live in. There may be violence still, I don't know. But the most significant or important violence that we face is violence from the police. And that's something that we might have a better ability to control politically if we had more resources to influence the electoral process.
Well, I have to disagree. I think that most of the violence is us creating. I mean, 300 shootings in Chicago. The police. Yes, they need to be held accountable, and yes, we do need police reform. But the violence that we plague on ourselves is nowhere near. You can't compare that. Let's say law enforcement is killing us more than we killing ourselves.
I would say if you looked at the historical record, and I agree with you, Chicago is a really, really bad situation, but Chicago is probably the most extreme case also. But I would disagree with you about the violence that we inflict on ourselves being more significant than the violence that is inflicted on us, especially from a historical standpoint. Uh, I would say that white Americans are the most violent people that I've ever encountered, especially the folks who are of the sort who engaged in the invasion of the Capitol on January 6th. Those are the people I'm really afraid of. And so I think we're walking down the wrong street when we focus exclusively on internal community violence or focus on claiming that our central problems are internal to the Black community. Our central problems are a consequence of what white supremacy has imposed upon us. And if we had adequate resources, we would be much better able to cope with those conditions and circumstances. So, yeah, we do disagree.
But I wanted y'all to have this conversation out loud, because his thinking and your thinking and your research, Dr. Darity, these are the conversations that people need to hear, and the answers that they need to hear. So, Mr. Eddie, is there anything more you want to ask? Like, this is the opportunity.
Yeah. So, like I was saying before, yeah, money will help for those that will know what to do with it. And yes, a lot of our young men, the reason why they're out there doing what they're doing, because they don't have opportunities. So the money will help them, but they do need guidance. They do need mentorship. So that's something that we can do after the fact. But just saying, well, give us the money without the proper mentoring and the proper, because I know I didn't understand money until I became an adult. So a lot of us need financial literacy. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't get the money with these saying, well, we need to put these things in place. But I'm saying that once we get the money, we need to come together as a collective so we can help each other. Because like I said, I didn't learn about financial literacy until I became an adult. My parents didn't teach me because they didn't know.
So one of the things we say in our book is, if people are concerned about this question of skills for financial management, in advance of the receipt of reparations money, we could provide people with the service of some sort of financial training or financial literacy opportunities. We've actually described that as pre-reparations preparation. And so, I'm fine with that, but I am very concerned when people suggest that the reason why we have the deprived condition that we're confronted with is because of our own behavior or our own shortcomings, because that's clearly not the case.
Mr. Eddie?
Well, I didn't hear the last thing, the audio dropped.
Yeah, we're having some audio issues.
I said, well, I'm not sure where the audio dropped.
I didn't hear nothing. So
you didn't hear anything?
No. The last part when he was saying about whatever that last piece was.
So the last piece that I mentioned was that if we are very concerned about this question about whether or not people have financial management skills, one of the things that we say is a possibility in our book is to provide people with those types of skills and training in advance of their receipt of the reparations payments. And I said that, there's a phrase that we've used to describe this. I don't think it's original with us, but we can call this pre-reparations preparation. I also said that I'm really, really concerned, though, about the point of view that has it that the reason why Black people are in a deprived condition is because of their own shortcomings or lack of knowledge, which is clearly not the case. The reason Black people are in the condition that they're in is because historically the federal government has promoted the building of wealth for whites and denied Black Americans the opportunity to do so.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I know the history of this country and the things they've done to us, but at some point in time, this is, separate from reparations. There do come a time where you have to have some kind of self-responsibility and self-accountability. We know what happened in the past, and I get that and understand that. But there's some things that
let me ask this. Are you saying that there's a greater degree of irresponsibility in the Black community than there is in any other community in the United States?
Well, what I'm saying is this. I don't want to, if I live, I'm from Los Angeles, right? So I shouldn't have to make enough money to move out of my community because there's violence in my community, right? I should be able to stay in my community, open up a business, practice group economics with other business owners and people that's in our community. What my main fight is that I'm with reparations because I know it would help us. But my main fight is that the violence within our community. Why do you think conditions in any community would be the same if you had this very, very dramatic change in the resources that people had access to? Oh no! So what I'm saying is that I agree with you, but what I'm saying is that once we get resources, right? But we still have to work with like I said. If I stay in the hood, I shouldn't have to move out the hood because there's violence, right? So there's some people in the hood that make money,
and I agree with that. But I also think that the major reason people are having to move out of the hood is because of processes of gentrification that's making it too expensive for them to live there. I don't think most people are moving out of all Black neighborhoods primarily because there's some significant degree of violence. I think they're actually getting pushed out as a consequence of gentrification.
Well, my experience is that most people when there's violence in the Black community, they want to move, but they can't afford to move. So I know they got gentrification going on, and that's a real thing. But most of the people I deal with, because of the violence in the community, they don't want to be there, but they can't afford to move because other places they go to, it's too expensive. But I'm not against reparations. I think we need it. To me, once we get the money, we need to really pull together as a community and work with our people and, like I said, financial literacy, mentor our youth, because if they don't have a mindset change, the whole point I'm trying to make during this whole conversation.
Yeah. I think where we disagree is I don't think that there are all these mindset weaknesses that Black people possess in the present moment. I don't think we're any more dysfunctional than any other group that's in the United States. I think we are the group that's been uniquely damaged by the way in which the society public policies have been designed and operated. And that's what needs to be reversed, and we need to be compensated for the harm that we've been subjected to. But I guess I just don't share this view that there's all this dysfunctionality in the Black community that's any more serious than dysfunctionality that exists in any other community. And I would warrant that if other groups in the United States had been subjected to the same history, they probably would look to be in even worse condition than the Black American community. In fact, you could argue that there's an amazing degree of resilience given the kinds of pressures that we've been confronted with.
You want me to jump in?
I do, because see, these are the conversations, Dr. Darity, that are being had when I travel and people, they, this mindset. So I wanted you to address it specifically. So yes, Eddie, continue.
Okay, yeah. So we're not all the same, right? We have different classes. You got people that's middle class, educated, uneducated. What I'm saying is this: when you look at our community, and we're talking about the inner city, where where black folks are at. I'm just saying that yes, we do need reparations. We do need jobs. We need everything above financially. But I've personally seen people that have made money and they're still out there shooting. They're still out there doing stuff with the rappers. We have rappers that are getting. We got
No
rappers.
doubt there.
We got,
Of
we
course,
got
every
rappers out there.
community has a
Okay.
distribution of individuals.
Okay, what I'm saying is,
And not
yes.
everybody behaves in the same way.
No,
But what
no,
I'm asking
but
you, are you claiming that black people have more bad actors than other communities? Because if
I'm not.
you are, that's
I'm
where we
not.
sharply
I'm not.
disagree.
I'm not worried about other communities. I'm worried that I can't
Well,
go.
no, because we're talking about disparities, differences in outcomes. And if those disparities are due to differences in the behavior across groups, that's one argument. And that seems to be the argument you're making. It's not an argument that I embrace. My
No,
argument
listen.
is that the disparities that we observe have very little to do with any kind of differences across groups. The disparities have to do with what has been done differently to various groups. And we're the group that has received the most severe burden in this society.
Right. So what I'm saying is this: when I say I'm not worried about other groups, it's because when I stay in Compton or Watts or Chicago, I have to worry about my community. So I have to worry about the gangs in my community and trying to work with them to try to get them to stop the shooting, so little kids can stop getting killed. What I'm saying is, you have a lot of these dudes that make a lot of money selling drugs. You got these rappers who make millions of dollars, and they still out there gangbanging, they still out there shooting, they still out there killing. So what I'm just saying is, my point is, because I don't want people to take away what I'm trying to say. Yes, give us the money, because the money will solve a lot of these problems. The money will
I
solve.
want to know what the numbers are, and I don't want your numbers to be restricted to Chicago, which is probably the most violent case in the country. What are the numbers of all of these individuals who you claim to be drug runners who are gang banging and whatever? What do these statistics look like nationwide?
I mean, in every major city, you got New York, you got Los Angeles. I mean,
No. What do the numbers look like? Don't just tell me that you see these things in every major city. I don't want anecdotes. I want some data.
well, I don't have the data per se to give you that saying like.
So you have a narrative without data.
Well, I put it like this: I live in LA, and every time I turn on the news, we have a shooting. So, and it's almost every other day. It's in LA, Compton, Watts, little kids getting killed. So I'm saying, personally, I wouldn't. I don't live in those communities. I used to, but I had to make my money and move out. So I'm a living example of knowing what it is in the community. I actually, you don't know much about me, but I'm a person who actually helped people that was in gangs get jobs. And once they start getting jobs, they stop being in gangs. So I know money is the issue that can solve all of this.
We're in agreement then. I don't understand the big point you're making then. If you say, if people are in a better situation economically, many of these behaviors actually are no longer present.
Yeah.
So we're in complete agreement there.
Right. And it just, but then also, I've also seen guys who, regardless if they have money or not, they still,
Yeah,
deal what they want to do.
Of course. But the question is, what are the numbers?
Well, I can't give you no number as far as like saying it's 20% or 10%. But I will say this: when I being around, because I work in those communities and I used to live in those communities, You got some people that want to do the right thing if given the opportunity, giving them, money, a chance to make it a living wage. And you got some guys that don't care about that. Like I give you an example, my cousin just got out of the penitentiary, out of prison, and he was saying they in California, I don't know about any other state, but they got a whole bunch of programs where they come into the prison and they'll train you for work, and when you get out, there'll be a job waiting on you. And this came out of my cousin's mouth. He said majority of those dudes wasn't signing up to get the services and the help. He said the only thing they was doing was talking about when they get out, what next caper or what next criminal activity they're gonna get. So I guess so people won't walk away with misunderstanding what my motive is. Only thing I'm saying, yes, we are owed the money. They need to give it to us. We can spend the money however we want to spend it. If we want to go and fly around the world and go shopping, that's our business. The money's owed to us. Whatever we do with the money is our business. Only thing I'm saying is that I have to be passionate about, yes, once we get the money as a community, we need to be ready to, come together. We need to work.
And I think I said at the very beginning that if that's your perspective, then you should take the initiative of trying to organize people to use the money in the way that you're describing, so that the folks who have a similar point of view as you could join with you and work on this kind of approach to using the money. So that,
Tamara,
that's on you.
Right. So Tamara, I had another question I want to ask Dr. Darity. A lot of times when we hear about us getting money, they always say that first, who's paying for it, where the money's going to come from, and that, okay, just say if they do borrow the money from the treasurer and print it and give it to us, because I'm just asking the question, they always said it's going to raise the debt ceiling and the country just can't afford it. I want to ask you, since you're an economic major, what do you say about that when they said they can't afford it and where the money's going to come from?
Well, it's interesting. Didn't the government simply spend about $6 trillion over the past 2 years in response to the pandemic without raising taxes?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where the money's going to come from.
So politically, from my understanding, do you think that we have not our representative, but do you think politically that the politicians feel that their constituents really don't support us getting reparations, and that's the reason why they shy away from it?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think that we would ever get reparations with the existing Congress, and I've never said that was an expectation that I had. That's precisely why what you said at the beginning of this conversation is so important. That we need to elect people like Tamara Shealey to the U.S. Congress, people who are committed to the reparations initiative. So we have to change the Congress before we have any realistic chance of having a reparations plan adopted at the national level.
Okay, so earlier when we talked about raising the debt ceiling,
the debt ceiling is an obstacle that is placed in the way of doing spending for the right things. You can increase the deficit, which is what always happens by definition if you have more expenditures than you take in taxes, but you don't have to increase the debt. Increasing the deficit and increasing the debt are not the same things. And in fact, whether or not the government chooses to finance something by taking on additional debt is entirely a matter of choice. They don't have to do that. The only barrier to new spending is whether or not you're going to produce significant inflation.
Right.
And you always have to be cognizant of that, regardless of what you're spending on. So, in our book, again, we talk about ways in which you might fund a reparations plan where you would not have a high risk of producing significant inflation.
Okay, because that's one of the arguments I was going to bring that up. They would say, well, if we print the money, it's going to devalue the dollar, inflation, and I think most
Well, I mean,
Americans.
essentially, the kind of funding that was put forward under the American Rescue Plan and under the CARES Act was roughly that. It was the equivalent, at least metaphorically, of just printing new money. And it's only now, at the end of 2021, that we are seeing some significant change in prices. Now we're experiencing some of that inflation. But we haven't had much inflation. I mean, if you go back to the Great Recession, the government spent a huge sum of money. Now they basically devoted it to bailing out the banks rather than bailing out the folks who were suffering. But nevertheless, they spent a huge amount of money, and there was no inflation whatsoever. So you have to really think about the context and circumstances in which the new expenditure is being made.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah. So I
Yep.
I am concerned about inflation effects, but I think you can design the program so you
Yep.
won't have a significant inflation.
Because that's why Tamara's out there promoting, and I'm out there promoting. We run into those roadblocks when people say, well, we give you, let's just say you said it was 14 trillion, and say if they had to print the 14 trillion, it would devalue the dollar, it would have higher inflation, and people are just not willing to vote on something like that or support something like that because, it doesn't benefit them. Our reparations doesn't benefit them.
It wouldn't benefit us if we got the $14 trillion and the value of the dollar was eliminated at the same time.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so we should be concerned about the inflation effects. But one of the things we propose in the book is that you could spread the spending out across a decade, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't want to do it for longer than that. But if you spread a $14 trillion expenditure out across a decade using the same amount in every year, we're talking about $1.4 trillion a year. And that's very, very different in terms of the implications of the spending impact of giving people $14 trillion just at once. And then there's some other ways in which you could mitigate the inflation effects. You could give people the funds in another form besides a cash transfer. So you would want to have a direct payment, but it could be in a different form. It could be an annuity. It could be a trust account where people would not spend the money immediately or all of it immediately. And so you'd have less of an inflation effect.
Right. Yeah, because I was kind of, like I said, I'm not an economist like you, but I was thinking, like, say if they gave us like enough money where we can invest it and pull down the dividends, that's another way that and I kind of like that a little bit better because we'll have an opportunity to keep, drawing from the well. You know what I mean? If we had recurring payments every month and maybe some upfront cash too. So in case we want to open up a business or something like that, that's kind of like what I was looking at as well when I was, exploring what I think that should look like as far as the payout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the day we got cryptocurrency too, so that might be another option.
Don't go there.
Well, Dr. Darity, I just want to say thank you for being a guest on the broadcast. I wanted this conversation. I wanted to be a reparations update.
So this isn't the conversation I expected. I thought we were going to talk about local reparations, and we were going to talk about this whole effort to link local reparations to trying to get this really badly written piece of legislation, HR 40 through. I mean, that's the NCOBRA NARC agenda, that they really want to get HR 40 passed. And I think a couple of nights ago, I heard Cam Howard saying that one of the reasons that they were pushing HR 40, pushing for local reparations, was because they thought that the momentum would support passage of HR 40.
Mm-hmm. And what's your thoughts on that? Because that was Robin.
Well, I mean,
that was her answer too.
I wish people would actually read HR 40. Especially read the version that came out of the House Judiciary Committee in April. Because I think if people actually read it, they'd see that this is not a desirable piece of legislation, and it is not a path to true reparations.
Dr. Darity, point to some of the specifics of what this new version says, if you can. Just give us some insight, because I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of people that will read it, and then there's a lot of people that are like gonna just go along. So are there some specifics in there, Dr. Darity?
Yeah, so one of the things that's a specific that should be mentioned is the fact that the bill provides for salaries of up to $170,000 for each of the members of the commission. And as a consequence, it creates a really peculiar motive for some people who might want to be on the commission. They would not necessarily be doing it just because this is a sacred mission, but they would be doing it because they're going to get paid. And so that's one concern. The second concern is that the original version of the bill back in 1989, 1990, provided for 7 members of the commission. The Japanese American Commission consisted of 9 members ultimately. But this piece of legislation says that there are going to be 15 members, 3 appointed by the president, 3 appointed by the House, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, 3 appointed by the President pro tempore of the Senate, and then the remaining 6 would be appointed by the commission's director and approved by a majority of the other 9 members. And these individuals are supposed to be from major civil society and reparations organizations that have historically championed the cause of reparatory justice. Now, since I'm aware that this piece of legislation has been rewritten on a number of occasions, primarily by NARC, I'm also aware that the objective of having those 6 positions is for them to be the representatives who get appointed by whoever is the director. And so we ought to think about this as being a commission that is heavily influenced by NCOBRA and NARC and their particular agenda for reparations. So that's the second big point. A third related point is a quorum for the commission is 7 persons in the legislation. 7 persons out of 15, which means you could have a quorum that would consist of less than half of the members of the commission. In fact, you could have a quorum if you simply had the 6 people who were appointed by the director and 1 more person. And so there's some shenanigans going on there. And I think the next to last thing I'll mention is that this particular version of the law says that the Federal Advisory Committee Act does not apply to this particular commission. The Federal Advisory Committee Act is the act that mandates that commissions are responsible for conducting all of their proceedings in the public eye, that they have to have hearings, that they have to make public the substance of their deliberations and so forth. So if the Federal Advisory Committee Act does not apply, this commission, the HR 40 Commission, could conduct all of its proceedings in secrecy. Okay. And then the last thing I'll mention is The bill is entirely open-ended about what ultimately the commission would be recommending to Congress in the way of reparations plans. And this means in turn that there's no assurance that the reparations plan would be designed to establish the eligibility of Black Americans who are descendants of U.S. slavery. There's no assurance that the bill would prioritize elimination of the racial wealth gap. There's no assurance that the bill would be designed for direct payments to be made to eligible recipients. And in fact, one of the comments that Cam Howard made the other night, and he's the vice chair, he's a national vice chair for NCOBRA, or a national co-chair for NCOBRA. He said that one of the reasons they wanted to pursue local reparations was because it would establish an infrastructure at the local level for managing reparations payments, which means that they do not have in mind direct payments to eligible recipients. They have some sort of notion that there'd be some third party that would be managing the receipt of the reparations funds. And then the final thing that is not a directive for the commission in designing its reparations plan is that this is not a plan that says that the federal government has the fundamental responsibility for meeting the bill. So I think HR 40 is a terrible piece of legislation, but there's a number of people who have endorsed it without ever actually reading the bill.
I think I'm speechless because I haven't read this new version. I've skimmed some of it, but I that's a mic drop, Dr. Darity. I feel like we're being bamboozled, and I'm not feeling all right with this at all.
Yeah, I think one of the tragedies is that people have been encouraged to think that supporting HR 40 is supporting reparations. And I think we have to sever the two. Being against HR 40, you might be opposed to it because you generally don't like the idea of Black reparations. But you can also be opposed to HR 40 because it's not going to get us to true reparations. And that's my position.
And just that alone, Dr. Darity, yeah. So this is why I am running. This is, look, we're going to have to trash that. Let's just be honest. We're going to have to trash it. Like, just throw that in the trash. That's what it sounds like. And start all over and rewrite this and make it be very specific to our justice claim for those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery. Like, we're going to have to trash that, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't take the risk with a bill that doesn't give the commission any directives about what the content must be of the reparations plan.
Yeah. And this is and that's why I run. And one thing I will give some credit to the all the work that's been done. It's on our we're talking. We're having these conversations out loud about reparations. You have advocates all across the country. I see y'all in the chat. I see you, family. Y'all been chiming in. I see you over here. See you over here on the Clubhouse app. I'm live over there. But yeah, there are advocates all around the country, and we're fighting, and we're vocal, and we're going to get reparations specifically for those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery. So we're going to have to throw HR 40 and S40 in the trash. It's going to have to be gone.
Yeah.
Eddie, you brought up a lot of great questions today, and you and I have had many conversations, and you had a lot of questions that, trust me, that I've heard. And Dr. Darity, I know they were elementary to you. These are very basic questions. And
no, they're not elementary. They're actually, I take them quite seriously because a lot of people have these questions.
Yes, I'm telling you, around the state here in Georgia, he's out west in California, and these are questions that I get all the time, and pushback that I get constantly. So to have you to answer them and take your time on this Saturday morning, I appreciate it. And to break down HR 40, and why reparations, the way it's being described and the what is happening is not specific to those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery, and why we fight and why we got to be mindful that this is a campaign, my campaign to the United States Senate, that we have to win. We are into race number 5, y'all, but this has to be it. This has to be it. So I ask that you go to the website and support. Dr. Darity, thank you for joining me on this Saturday morning.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Take good care.
Take care, Dr. Darity. Eddie,
Bye-bye.
have a great one. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So everybody, that was Dr. Darity, that was Mr. Eddie that joined me to ask those questions that I get constantly. So I just want to say thank you, y'all. This is a race we have to win. And to hear HR 40 ain't what we think it is, ain't what we know it to be, and the specifics to why, we're going to have to throw that in the trash, but we'll use it for what it's good for now. That's, the narrative. It's pushing the conversation. If that's all it does, we'll take that, but we're going to have to throw it in the trash. I am Tamara Shealey. Every Saturday morning, I give voice to issues, activists and activism all around the country. I ask that you support this broadcast. This is independent media at its finest, y'all. We got to tell our own stories. We got to be we have to be our own voices. Go to the website, tamarashealey.com. And I put all the broadcasts on there so you can actually go back and listen to the broadcast on the Tamara Shealey website. I'm taking a bold agenda to Washington. I ask that you go to the website, tamaraforgeorgia.com. Go to the website, support, volunteer, donate. All hands on deck. May 24th, 2022. This is it. This is it, y'all. I don't have another race to run. I'm giving this everything. My entire life is in this. The next 5 months from here, you going out, you're buying Christmas gifts. Please go to the website and donate, support, volunteer. All hands on deck, y'all. All hands on deck. I work alongside churches in this reparations movement. I am scheduling now to visit churches starting in February, Black History Month, Reparations Sunday, so we can get in front of these congregations and have this hard conversation about why we need reparations for those that don't understand why. Reparationsunday, y'all.com, reparationsunday.com. You can also find me here in Georgia, HB 541. There's a bill right here in the great state of Georgia, HB 541, in the Georgia State Legislature right now to address the impact of slavery and Jim Crow on those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery right here in Georgia, HB 541. You can find me on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Clubhouse app. White Women for Reparations. White Women for Reparations. We have a lot of white women, y'all, that have joined in this fight, that are committed to standing alongside us, fighting with us for reparations for those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery. Join us on the Clubhouse app Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are listening to a book right now, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and these white women are committed, but they need to see you too. So come join us. Come join us. And on Thursdays, Hard Conversations, White Women, Black Women, Let's Talk. This is where we go there. This is where we have those hard conversations specific to race, racism, how we feel about each other, what's going on. We have those conversations, y'all. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Clubhouse app. Again, it's the holiday season. Polish and Politics. It's a fun fundraiser, y'all. I've tried to be as creative as I can be with making sure that we have some fun fundraisers. Go to the website, tamaraforgeorgia.com. Click on that fundraisers tab and go to Polish and Politics. Buy something. Well, you're not buying it. You're donating. You're donating and you're getting something for free. Just let's have some fun this holiday season. Get your campaign swag, y'all. Get your campaign swag. We got t-shirts. We got mugs. Get your campaign swag, y'all. Go to the website. Again, tamaraforgeorgia.com. Click on the fundraiser. So I am Tamara Shealey, candidate for the United States Senate, committed, y'all. We have a race to win. Reparations. We got to go into Congress and we're going to have to rewrite the whole damn bill. HR 40, S40, we're going to throw it in the trash. We got a race to win. Go to the website. I love you guys. See you on next week.
When we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. Young prodigies. Grow. Free.
Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
Kicking the door, coming for our 40 acres and more. Our 6.4 trillion. Miss said no, we fought the Civil War. We came from the poor.
Start from the bottom, we still on the floor. We pray to the Lord.
Amen.
Picking the cotton, our fingers are sore.
Straight out the underground, escaping from slavery. The only cemeteries that we had were the trees. Watching our bodies while they blew in the breeze. Niggas in the north side to get free.
That way came from slavery. Where's all the marijuana shit on me? Put her head on the door, but the world won't scheme. Stick to the north side to get free.
Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
We taking them back. Putting Pennis Bridge on the map. Police came with the strap. That son was buddy, no cap.
Stop capping.
Speaking of cap, Kaepernick taking knees at the flag. Where my justice at? We built this nation, better give me them rack. All fat, just a match and a little bit of gasoline. 4 girls got burned back in 63.
400 years and we still ain't free. Our rise, we rise, take a knee.
Kaepernick.
Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me.
Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
We stuck in the trap with no shoes, trying to pull up bootstraps. Increasing the gap. Wealth got bigger, so we had to adapt. Discriminated cause we black. I know it worth more than I know it's a fact. They tryna feed scraps. Strike me on board so we can't come back.
30 years ago on April 19, Yusef and Triremi chemical read.
If it happened to them, think it happened to me. Screaming out of 5 to a free.